the Sultan of a certain kingdom sent a messenger to the great Sufi saint Al-Ghazali, requesting his attendance at the palace because the Sultan was expecting an important ambassador from a foreign land. But Al-Ghazali sent the messenger back with a note saying, "The air of this place is more conducive to my health, and since it cannot be bottled, I will not be present at the appointed time." The Sultan was very, very angry, but as it happened, the visit of the ambassador was cancelled. But not long afterwards, Al-Ghazali visited the capital and went in to the attendance of the Sultan just at a moment when an assassin entered the window with a knife. And Al-Ghazali was able to feign off the attack and save the life of the Sultan. The Sultan said to Al-Ghazali, "I am very grateful for your saving my life, but I'm still angry with you. Why did you not attend when I called you?" And Al-Ghazali replied, "The duty of those who know is to be in the place that they are supposed to be doing what it is that they're supposed to be doing. It is not their duty to be waiting for ambassadors who do not arrive." And then there's a second story that allows a question to be asked. A certain scholar went to a great rabbi and requested the rabbi to teach him the contents of the Talmud. Now the rabbi said to the scholar, "The Talmud is unlike the Torah and the other great books. The Talmud is the deepest of esoteric teaching. I would have to test you first to see whether you are worthy to have these teachings." "Test me," said the scholar. So the rabbi said, "If two men fell down a chimney, and one had a face covered in soot, and the other's face was clean, which of them would wash their face?" And the scholar immediately responded, "Oh, the one who had the dirty face." "Oh," said the rabbi, "ponder for a moment and consider. If the man who had the dirty face confronted his friend who had the clean face, would he not consider that his face was also clean? And the clean man's face, looking at the man who had the dirty face, would say, 'Oh, I have a dirty face, I better go and wash it.'" So the scholar was somewhat confused, shaking his head. And the rabbi said, "Well, let me ask you another question. 2 men fell down a chimney, and one had a clean face, and one had a dirty face. Which one washed his face? And the scholar shook his head. Well, you just already told me it was the one. But the rabbi said, consider. If they looked in the mirror, the clean-faced man would see that he had a clean face, and the one with the soot-covered face would see that his face was dirty, so he would go and wash his face. And the scholar was thoroughly confused. And then the rabbi said, let me ask you a question. 2 men fell down the chimney, and one had a soot-covered face and the other one had a clean face. Which one would wash his face? And the scholar shook his head. He said, now I'm totally confused. And the rabbi said, consider deeply, ponder. How would it be possible for 2 men to fall down a soot-laden chimney and one of them come out with a clean face and the other come out with a dirty face? It's totally illogical. But the question that arises after hearing these 2 stories goes even deeper without the necessity to consider the contents of the stories as such. What is the difference between knowing and knowledge? What's the difference between the great Sufi saint Al-Ghazali stating the duty of those who know is to be where they're supposed to be, doing what they're supposed to be doing, and the machinations of mind, the levels of mind that are indicated as a process, knowledge, the dimensions of mind and knowing. What's the difference for you?
A noun, a tangible sort of thing, whereas knowing is a state of being.
Crystallize it. Crystallize it.
Knowing is
knowledge.
Knowing is coming from within. Being, knowledge is from external.
To do with the mind. Isn't it? Totally.
Listening involved.
Yes.
So it's a whole body thing.
Absolutely.
It's beyond, even beyond that. Whereas knowing is that, the exercise of
Yes. It's debatable.
activity.
Yes, isn't it? People can debate with you, argue with you about it. But knowing, and when we state with absolute knowing, Nobody argues with you. Have you found that? No argument, no debate, no dialogue. It's the difference, isn't it? So it changes our interaction with all of life. But we have to know that we know. Otherwise, it's always debatable.
One could say one you question and one you don't.
One you question and one you don't. Yes. One you question and one you
So the question sometimes comes to me is, sometimes we think we're knowing.
don't. Right?
I remember reading Rasha Pierre gave a story about his journey when he was with his master and how he'd been sent on this mission to visit all the shrines of the masters, many masters. And one stage he went and he met some other Sufi and they were singing and he was so he felt in a high state of being, and then he needed to go back to his master because his master said he'd call for him to come, and he went back there feeling so sure of himself, and his master opened the door and looked at him and went, "What are you doing here? You called me." "No, I didn't." "Go away." So he was in a flux about his knowing. It can be tricky sometimes, yeah?
Very tricky, very tricky. Yes. And one could extrapolate from the story the reasons for that, because we know this is just what masters do. But was his knowing wrong? This is what we ask ourselves, isn't it?
You don't have to go and find out about his own doubts because of the response of answering the call.
So it's our own doubts, did you say?
Well, the Divine Mother did the same. The Divine Mother did the same thing for me years ago, because I would sit beside her and she would elbow me to say something, and I would tell a story and say something. And then one day she said to me, she said, "You know what you say to people is too high, they don't know what you're talking about." And I was quite shattered, absolutely shattered by that, because I totally understood it was coming from his knowing. So what did she mean? And it was somewhat like having the door slammed in your face. And I went back and I wept about it and I meditated on it, and the realization that came was you can't change what's there in the moment, so you cannot doubt what's being given out. But for whatever reason it was, it shattered something in me in some way that I really don't know.
And brought up a doubt as well.
It brought up
there
an
was
absolute,
a doubt in there.
but
There was a doubt in there that got brought up by her saying that, so she's alleviating your doubt.
absolutely. Because after that, there was no question about it. You're just there, and it's there.
So once the doubt's gone, the knowing is there.
Yes.
And there's, like you're saying, there's no question anymore.
But when we look at it, and I had to look at it in the context of the whole period of time with Divine Mother, and it was a stripping away. So there was no possibility that you could make any claims for yourself, like afterwards saying, oh, wasn't that good, or even asking questions about how it was received. Did you understand? Or, you couldn't claim. So that really was effective in somehow shattering some possibility or level that you could make any claims. Separateness.
So you didn't have any discussions when you were telling stories? People were not responding?
No.
Then it's so hard to know what people's understanding is too.
Yes. But it wasn't about that. It wasn't about that at all. To take it a little further, the reason she had me sitting beside her, and which of course she didn't need at all, but it was all for my benefit obviously, was to tell people who she was. And there was no questioning that, because the stories were all for that purpose, to make it known what had left the head of her tears, who gathered who and what she was. There was no dialogue about that. It is wonderful here to have the possibility of being able to give expression to it. So it's somewhat different, isn't it? Because it does do something, doesn't it?
It's moving and clarifying.
Challenge you to think deeply about it and not just listen to the story and practice the story.
That's right. Because, yes, it's not about the contents of the stories at all.
And then what comes up too, like you sharing that story, and then you sharing more of that story, and then you can see that that student would have had that process too, or whatever process they would have had to have come to realise that they were called, and that brought up their doubts. And that's a lot of what happens in life too, isn't it? It's like whenever your reactions or feelings, or it's all from our stuff that we have inside of us, and whatever it is outside of us is bringing that to our attention, bringing it up, the doubt that's aside from the knowing.
Yes.
So it's all a beautiful gift.
Yes.
Well, in that particular instance, I mean, to go further to the story, the master actually, scholar, he said it was his ego.
Yeah.
It was his ego that because he was feeling so good and so high with the chanting and the experience that that he actually wanted to go back and share it with his master. So, what.
Yes.
So it was an ego thing.
Yes, you see, it's an ego, it's all to do with
Yeah, so it can be
underlying
very,
instrumental.
so it can be very puzzling.
Yes.
When sometimes we think we know something and then we discover we don't know it all.
We know nothing at all.
Something will soon arise to let us, clarify that too.
Yes, that's right. The processing.
Nice to see you again.
Likewise.